Well, let's go ahead and get started before it's too late. So, everybody rise. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We've got a couple new faces here, so let's just do a round of introductions. My name is Charles Bradsky. I am the Transportation Projects Manager. I manage the TIP, which is the 5-year plan.
I'm Candace Eklund. I'm the Executive Assistant at Nursing.
Melissa Moore, Michigan City Parks and Recreation.
Shannon Eason, Michigan City Parks and Recreation.
Tim Werner, Michigan City Engineer.
Nick Mick, City of Porte City Engineer.
Meredith Stillwell, Director of Administration at Nursing. Beth Schrader with SEH.
A new face.
Paul Sanders with Genesis Factory.
So, meeting minutes from November 19th.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That would be none. Approved. Public comment? There's no public comment today. Old business program of projects. Did everybody see the program of projects that was sent out? Any questions on it? Okay. I just wanted to make a comment that I had to balance the budget, so not so much for this group, but Lake and Porter projects had to shift and move around and move out a year or two, so I could balance that budget. They have other unique challenges, I should say, and that they've lost some funds because of new urbanized areas and so on and so forth. But that hasn't been the case for Michigan City. So I will move into new business. And talk about some changes in receiving additional funds. Nick ran into some of this recently, and this is all brand new information. I've known about this for a week and a half. There's been, like, obviously changes in receiving additional funds, and I'm talking about amendments. If you need additional funds for PE or right away, is mainly what we're talking about here. So as prior years, as I've often said, every spring we have money in the couch cushions that I can usually find, but on April 15th, that's where the couch goes.
Where do I get a couch like that one on the left?
My office.
Yeah. We'd rather not steal from your office, maybe somebody else's.
And that couch that you took, I mean, is there any cash in that couch? Is there any cash in that couch that you took?
Hey, one of these meetings I walked out with $886,000. So
That's a lot of loose change in the couch.
yeah, not bad for a driver with work back.
No.
So now this year, instead of in the spring, it's now the winter time. And April 15th is now March 1st, and this is what the couch looks like. So Northwest Indiana, that's what it's going to look like. So what's happened, really there's changes with the state involving the State Board of Accounts. They said there's no more, because it's federal, these are federal funds, or state funds, either one. We can no longer accept FEMA's requests unless it's reflecting what's in the tip. So if you have if you work out an LPA agreement with your consultant for additional funding, we have to have that in the tip. So we have to do not only an amendment to your LPA consultant contract, there also has to be an amendment to the tip.
And is that what I'm waiting on, the 80,000?
Yeah, I think so.
And there was no amendment to the contract? I don't think.
So if there's no amendment, we just gotta get the contract in the tip. So, so this means that, like I said, federal funds are not being transparently shown to the public. So amendment contracts and their request for additional funds. So it means if you're requesting additional funds, it must be approved by NDOT, State Board of Accounts, Indiana Department of Administration, the Attorney General, all those. So
once it goes to NDOT, they're gonna do a change.
right. So so there needs to be some coordination between NERC, the LPAU, and the consultants. And the tip must be constrained, but that's nothing new, that's minor. Generally in the past don't give you money if we don't have it. And then lastly, Governor Braun has made some changes to the State Board of Accounts and given them an additional 15 days. So, if you have an amended contract with your consultant, you send that to Breanne. She reviews it, review number 1. She sends it to contracts, NDOT contracts. They review it, that's review number 2. They send it to finance, review number 3. They send it then to the Indiana Department of Administration, it's review number 4. Then they send it to the Attorney General, that's review number 5. And then when they've all approved it, then they send it to the State Board of Accounts. And then they review it. So it's 6 different reviews, and the last one has 45 days to review it. So before we could push something through on April 15th or before April 15th, now it looks like that day is now March 1st. We've got to get something in. And even March 1st is kind of pushing it. NDOT is now working with electronic signatures, so generally things have been going quicker. It's not putting into a manila envelope and going from one desk to the other. It's just being sent electronically, which is good. But if someone's on vacation or it gets misplaced in someone's mailbox or something like that.
At least in March 1st, spring break hasn't started yet, so there's probably fewer of them on vacation than April 15th.
Right. So, but April 15th was just to get it processed before May 1st deadline. So now we've got to back it out to
Even before March 1st.
yeah, so if you need something, March 1st is kind of like the deadline. So moving forward, and this is something we all need to work on, it's very hard to program funds, like I was just mentioned. It's not impossible, but it's very hard. So we're thinking the preferred route is to have it go before the February amendment, in the February amendment, because NERC considers an emergency amendment to be one of 2 things. One, a safety issue, public safety, like a bridge is falling down or something like that, or loss of funds. NDOT does not consider loss of funds an emergency or a response for an emergency.
So when you say loss of funds, is that your loss of funds due to the deadline
So-
to spend them?
Yeah. So if we don't spend the money, it disappears, right?
Right.
So, in the past, we've always been able to push through an emergency amendment. Ty signs it, and then they program the funds. Well, we can't do that anymore. So, we can still process it, but if you don't have that amended contract for those extra funds, and you're asking for extra funds, then you may not get them.
So in the case I had where we were gonna need additional funds, I submitted the FEMAs for what we had available. Then my intention would be that if we can get additional funds, I would submit FEMAs for the remainder. Is
So
that
does your
acceptable?
contract for this full amount?
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of cities can't do that because they don't know where that money's gonna be coming from. So if someone's not gonna wanna sign say a $600,000 contract, if they don't know where that they're gonna get reimbursed for 80% of those funds.
Yeah, and I mean, we have the first, 80% of 72, 80% plus. So, I mean, the scope
Right.
of work, what we'll do is we'll release that scope of work and then wait
Right.
until we can get a program. But I just didn't know if I would need to do an amended contract since we already have the contract in place, or if
For
I
the
would do-
whole 180,000.
Yeah.
So you submitted that to Brianne, and in your case, that's good. So now we just need to get to amend the TIP. And in that case, we could do an emergency amendment, and it could go through, but it would depend
We
on,
don't need to. That's the thing. Like it's
if we had the extra money we needed to spend it,
Yeah.
we could. So, but the big thing is you have to have an approved amended contract. And when Brianne looks at it, the first thing she does is look at the tip. If the tip doesn't match it, then she just sits on it or calls me and says, hey, when is this going through? So that's something we have to keep in mind. So in our tip amendments, my mouse isn't working. So our tip amendments, the federal highway has to approve them. It is taking longer, but I don't know if it's that big of a deal. Outside the fact that NDOT, State Board of Accounts, and I did have Department of Labor, but actually it is the Attorney Generals and IDOA have to approve the contracts. So, and now we need at least 45 days for State Board of Accounts. Planning on that. Before it was 30 days. But the whole idea now is we have to have that approved contract in to them, so. And of course, we wait till later on and then everybody else gets busy because they're approving more and more, trying to push more and more through. So the earlier we could do it, the better. So, like I said, the three of us the NERC, the LPA, and the consultant have to work closely to make sure that these additional funds are in our tip for the amended contract. And the construction lettings then really need to move up. Because before, when we did, we never allowed a May letting because it was just too risky. Now really, we don't want anything in March, because if you have a contract and it's over, then you, the city, may be on the hook for more money. I cannot guarantee anything after March 1st. By March 1st, we've got to program all those extra funds.
So we should stay away from lettings between February and July. We really shouldn't plan to have any lettings between
Correct.
February and July.
Correct, and actually, if you can get them in December,
Yeah.
all the better. In putting together the NOFAs over the past few years, I projected out what the cost would be in future years. And the one thing I've noticed is that there's a very small, if any, change in letting, the cost of lettings between Q2 and Q3. And I'm using the NDOT inflation calculator.
I think we've seen generally, it looks like better pricing when they are bidding over the winter months, trying to fill work the following.
Right.
It depends on the project, because some projects, multi-year projects don't always work that way, but, no, if we can shoot for that.
Yeah, and it depends on what's going on, is in, you know, if inflation's spiking up there, or if there's a shortage of something, or uncertainty as far as like oil prices, then asphalt prices could be odd or cattywampus or something like that. So it just kind of depends on what's going on with the prices. So, but if we can move projects into December, and remember, if it's a 1% increase in December over March, we're covering 80% of that. If you let in March, yeah, you might have saved some extra bucks, but you also run the risk of any money you would have saved, you're paying extra because you're now paying 23% or 25% instead of the 20%. Because NERC doesn't have the extra funds. So basically from March 1st, I'm gonna be looking to unload any extra money, because after, basically April 1st, I would want to, if I don't have the money already planned out, I'm gonna start giving it to transit. Which transit needs it, don't get me wrong, but these are highway dollars and they have transit dollars. So. Is there any questions on that? Kind of moving on then, August redistributions. Every year in July, I might get some extra funds. So what happens if you don't use your funds by the end of June? Those funds go back to Federal Highway, and then Federal Highway redistributes them throughout the country. So different states get different amounts of funds, and they have an expiration date of September 30th. So
Of the same year?
of that same year, yeah.
Okay.
So it's really difficult.
12 weeks you have to spend the money on?
Yes.
So existing contracts that have change orders attached that weren't covered potentially?
Yeah.
But
Or
you
if
still
you
have
have
to do an updated contract and go through all the.
So if you want, so ideally, if you had PE or right away in that year, you'd be ready to go in July or August to start that project, which means you'd have to start everything like in February, put an RFP out and go through that process so that you could have an approved contract starting in July. We could get you some money, and then that would, because NDOT is gonna program that money first. So we could get you that money, and then that would free up money later on in the year.
So in the case of phase 3, and I know this is different because it's going through you guys, but we're gonna be short on lid. So does this money apply to only right-of-way services, or is it also for purchasing?
It could be for purchasing.
Would these be considered, so like, say this year, would this be FY 25 or would it be 26, even though it's?
So it's FY 20, it's FY 25 monies.
Okay.
The federal fiscal year runs October 1st to September 30th.
So they'd be awarding that moved money before the end of September.
So being it flows through the state gives us this extra money, and it's not a guarantee. I don't know if we're getting any money or how much we're getting or anything about it until around July 1st.
I'm saying that because if we have a PE contract anticipated in FY 26, it would be advantageous for the whole group to make sure that we were ready before 26.
Right.
So that some of that money could be used and there'd be more money available in 26.
Right, so if we let a PE contract, like Nick was saying, if we set the FEMA's request in July or August, and that money got used for that, NDOT would take that August redistribution money, so it essentially would give us more money later on in the year.
It doesn't cut into our next fiscal year's funds,
No.
so that's good to know.
So a good thing, like you mentioned, the extra money for that PE for your crossing.
Mhm.
That's where we'll look if we get the money.
Yeah.
Again, we have to show fiscal constraint, so I can't program the money if we don't have it. So I'd have to find the money, and so so we've got to figure out how to do this. And there isn't a whole lot of time, as Shannon, you mentioned. It's not like we can do an amendment in the TIP because we would lose that fund, so we can't do an emergency amendment. So it's something that almost has to be teed up, ready to go.
So like if we had an alternate in the original contract bid but didn't award it, and it wasn't a big number, like say we just wanted to do one more intersection of ADA ramps or something, would we be able to get that money in September? Even if it wasn't originally, would we have to do it as a change order?
Well, I think you could get a change order approved in that time span, would be the thing.
You could get a change order, but that's with state funds, right?
Yeah, but just in general, I think knowing that that timeline is helpful. So if we can make sure contracts are essentially ready in the July time frame, that helps on the PE side, and then also knowing that if we have concerns about change orders, keeping that in mind would help.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of times in January when we do our quarterly meetings, I'm reminding people to, hey, you have money for PE or right away in this year. Are you going to use it? Yeah, we got. Well, you just need to start doing the RFP to get a program. When you could have done that 10 months earlier and started your project in July or August, and it would have accessed that extra money. If we got any extra money, it would have accessed that extra money. So, and sometimes it's not a whole lot of money. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's no money. I want to say it was like $63,000 last year, which not a whole lot of money, but it would have covered. That's an extra $63,000 or something. Is that clear as mud?
Yes. And helpful, thank you.
A little clearer.
I'm looking at how much I need compared to your 63,000. I'm like,
But see, if we put it in there for that 63,000, could almost, and if there's already something in there for say 63,000, and when, or let's say you needed 120,000.
another way.
100-foot trail.
Yeah. So next on is emergency amendments. Like I mentioned, NDOT does not consider extra funding or additional funding as an emergency. So even though we consider using that funding by the end of the year, they don't consider that an emergency. They just consider that not managing your money well. So we'll still do emergency amendments, but
Doesn't
we're
that
looking.
affect them too? Because then that's NDOT giving money back to the feds, looking like you really don't need this much money because you're letting all these funds expire. I mean, wouldn't they look at it the same way as you look at it, that we shouldn't let funds expire?
Yeah.
I've argued for, up until I was blue in the face to move a project to a July letting from a April letting. And that's something that would benefit them. And the answer is no.
Because it's outside the process.
Yes. And I even asked for one-offs.
Yeah.
Just give me this one exception.
But we've always done it that way.
Right. And so, yeah, it's, like I said, I've asked for a one-off, just this one time. I'll never, no.
Are you getting that government is dumb and ineffective? Just making sure you want to know all of it.
So the moral of the story is, if you can do the project on your own, it's a whole lot easier.
Without an executive order.
So, other new business, keep in mind that CE is limited to 12.5%. That's for our NOFA rules. A lot of the consultants, NDOT I think has released that allotted to go up to 15% now, what I've heard. But according to NERC's NOFA and the rules in there, we only allow 12.5%, so we'll cover 80% of 12.5%. I've seen a lot of them come in that the engineer's estimate is something, and then I'll look at and CE is coming in at 15 or 16% or something like that. So we need to just make sure that the consultants know that, yeah, you can sign whatever you want. I don't care what you give them. You can give them the moon. NERC is not going to cover it.
I think what's challenging with that is some of the smaller projects have a higher cost because of you still have to do NEPA, all this stuff, but there's not as much a project to absorb it too. So
Right.
So when you have a $500,000 project, it's hard to get it through the NDOT process for 12.5%.
Services,
I mean, it's hard to get it through.
Highland, a couple months ago, Highland had a contract to put a hawk signal in. Now granted, they had to tie it into two neighboring signals.
Next.
So, but the contract, and what would you think a hawk signal would cost?
All new?
A new hawk signal.
I don't even remember what the one on right there in the work.
Usually about what, 200?
200, I was gonna say 250, probably. No.
490.
Holy cow. Okay, we're not gonna do that.
Yeah, no. We're not doing anything anymore,
No.
Charles. We're done.
So,
Wow.
granted, it's a safety project, so they got at least 90%
Yeah.
return. But just keep in mind, that's how much going through the federal process, being you're taking over,
Was
that's
that
how
a-
much adds to a project.
Was that on a 5-lane road with signal and that in the middle or something?
It was on yours.
That was on Kennedy Avenue, 4 lanes. It's 4 lanes. And like I said, there was interconnect on to signals on both ends. So,
Wow.
but the engineer's estimate was 400, 380.
You'd be building sidewalks 1 square at a time.
You don't already have to do that?
That's what I'm doing, yeah, I was gonna say, that's what I'm doing now anyway, it's not gonna change.
You're running to Home Depot and Menards, or not Home Depot, Lowe's or Menards, and getting bags, 2 bags at a time.
I calculated it, and from the time I started 11 years ago or so, from our first sidewalk projects till now, the cost has increased about 250%.
We had bids last year, our winning bid was somebody just wanted to get their foot in the door, 87.5 per square yard. But the highest bid was 350 square yard.
Where, I mean, ramps,
That included ramps.
ADA ramps are like,
Outrageous.
I've seen them over $500 a yard.
We need to go back to the Native American footpaths.
But we still budget the same amount as
For
when I
the
started
hard
for
surface,
sidewalks.
no need sidewalk.
Yeah.
Live.
Well, I've got some ARPA funds to spend still, so at least I can do that this year.
Better hurry up before they disappear.
Yeah.
Is there any other new business?
I just have a question. The workshop presentation that you put on last year?
Yeah.
Is that somewhere that we can access it for training?
Yes,
It's on NERC's YouTube page.
and I can give you the articles.
That would be great. Because honestly, after the assistant superintendent attended that, with all the acronyms, he walked out and he's like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm like, okay, I'll take notes.
We gave him a list of acronyms.
You gave it to him?
Well, it was part of the packet,
Oh, was it? Okay, yeah.
and I'll give you that packet today.
I told him, like, don't expect to walk into this room with no back knowledge of this and come out knowing much. So, yeah.
Just come out to the project on PDQ.
When will we know kind of final answer from the last NOFA for Lake and Polk Street?
So
Now that there are other projects in
there was
our
only
group.
2 projects. There were 3 projects that were awarded through the NOFA.
That's it?
Well, one project was Lake Porte, because they didn't have the additional funds. And the other 2 projects were in Porte. So,
Did city even submit?
Are they awarded?
yeah, they awarded.
Oh.
Actually, I probably need to get a letter out.
You just said congratulations. Right?
Okay.
That was official.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, you've got awarded. I'll put a note down to send you an award letter.
Congratulations, Nick.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Oops. It's like, anytime I get an award letter now, I'm like, oh,
Take it when you can catch it.
oops.
I'll get that out. Thanks for reminding me.
Thank you.
Anything else? And let's adjourn? Oh, go ahead.
So I did email Charles our project was it railroad crossing is going to be a
Right.
little more expensive.
Yeah.
So do I need to ask the group, or are we okay to add some funds when available?
Well, it's when available. So I would be looking, I'd have to look at, see what 26 looks like.
Okay, so maybe next TROC.
Yeah, They originally, they had a 100% increase in their PE.
Yeah.
100%.
Our PE, so we broke the project out. So originally we were just gonna have to basically pay for the design, but because it's been a little time.
Of a railroad crossing on the trail.
Yeah, for a road. So since it's been a little time, we're having to account for whether we may be able to kind of get some things through with NDOT, but we may have to actually kind of redo the NEPA document and do more than we had originally planned, which is unfortunate, but.
Right. I don't see that being something we need to take before TROC, but
Okay.
we're here.
Trying 2026 funds?
If there's 26 funds.
So you're building our same Sands 3 for me, so I will have no projects in 26 unless Amtrak produces their cost estimates for phase 1.
Maybe we don't have to worry about
So, okay, for phase 1, once we get that, that will have to go, we will send that to NDOT, because NDOT said they would contribute
But that's signaling only,
for
correct?
signaling
Like
only,
ST 103 money? That we
Yeah.
get back,
130, not
or
130.
130, yeah, but we gave back like 446,000.
Yeah, but it was really, we had no idea what the cost was. It was just,
But I thought
I don't even think it was,
that pot of money was for signaling only, like no.
yeah, that's what they said. That's what they told me. They said that when you are ready, that we will take it, they will look at it again, but it would only be for signaling.
That's
So-
really all I foresee, like on my end with trails, outside of phase 3 being done, that crossing. And I'm just holding my breath, I can't even imagine what that cost could be. Because if you remember, it went from $200,000 and 8 weeks
400
later, it was
To
like
400 to 1.2.
1.3, and then it was over 2 million, based on zero engineering that they had done,
That was that scare, that was a scare factor.
throwing money out there.
Another $500,000, we just built a bridge.
We talked about
Another $500,000. Yeah. No, they, I think that was just a scare factor, trying to get you to say, okay, well, we won't do it.
But they want it done. That's what's crazy. Like, for safety purposes on their rail, they want, well, they has changed so many times over the years, but now they're showing a real interest in increasing safety of the rail line by constructing it.
But they were wanting to put in positive train control
Oh, yeah. And they
right
want-
next to US 12.
And they wanted us to not only pay for it, but pay for ongoing inspections and maintenance.
So put that in a Swiss bank account
Yeah.
and
we're
a
not-
Cayman Islands bank account.
No, we're not signing that.
Yeah.
Do we know, with Mitch and Jay not being here, is Michigan City's Liberty Trail all on track for 26 construction?
Didn't you inherit that, baby?
Yes, he did. That's not Jay.
Oh,
That's Tim.
hey, good for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Their consultant will tell you it is.
Yeah.
So in 26, we are probably gonna have this scary part because that'll probably go in March or April. But 27, moving in 27 on, we wanna have things in Q1 and Q2 for lettings. So. But yeah, they've said that they can have it ready in 26.
Great.
And again, all this information that I presented to you today is brand new information in the past week and a half.
Something, yeah.
So, I just added something to the agenda at the very last minute. So. Anything else? Adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Do I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That be no one opposed, so